Hello everyone, welcome back to another GMTL video. Today we'll be looking at how to build a very simple algorithm to trade in Python using the REST API and the Rotman Interactive Trader. Um, you don't need to have a very extensive knowledge of how to code in Python to follow along with this tutorials. However, I will assume that you've had some prior knowledge, so the very basic of Python coding, I will skip, and I'll be posting a tutorial below so that you can um, click on this link, go watch the video, learn how to the very basics, do a few exercises for you to get used to coding in Python, and then come back to this video. If you coded in a different language or have coded in Python a while back, I also recommend watching this tutorial just as a refresher and just to be able that we're all on the same page when we talk about how to code and just the very basics of coding in Python. So first thing you'll need is to have the RIT client and make sure that you have the API enabled. So for this, you'll look at the very bottom, you'll have API and API orders. You may make sure that both of those are green. If you click on API, you'll have this menu that will pop out, and you need to have a port, which is usually just 9,999, and an API key, which is basically your password. It's usually a very random string of characters, but I've changed it to JMTL API so that it's more simple for us to understand. And then we can save it. You'll also need to have a Spider, which is just a program for us to code our Python in. Um, I use Spider because it's the one I'm used to using, but you can use whichever software you prefer. If you've used a different one, it doesn't really matter at all. I just like having a place to code and having a place for my code to run without having to run it in a separate software or in a command prompt. And then you also need the Rotman Interactive Client API documentation, which is just basically where you'll have every single place to get like all the different informations that you can get using the API and how to post different orders. We'll go further into details about this later on. So let's just get a very simple information from the API. What we want to tell the API is get me the latest price for crazy. So first of all, we'll need some very basic package. So we'll need requests. So import requests, and then we'll also need JSON. Basically, request is how we'll be communicating with our API, and JSON is we'll be getting most of our responses from the server in the JSON format. If you don't know what the JSON format is, just Google it. It takes 5 minutes to learn. And so the JSON package will enable us to quickly parse the information. And now we need to have basically store our API key. So I'll just create a new variable and call it API key. And I'll just do squiggly line. And then, so first of all, we need to have to tell the program what it's looking for. So we'll go in our documentation. And if we go just down authentication, we'll go here and we'll see that it's looking for X API key header. So we'll copy this and paste it in our code. And then we'll have our password is GMTL API. We'll just make sure that it's the same because it is case sensitive. It is all caps, so I will change this. So now we have our basically our password, and now we'll create an object that I'll call API, and then requests, sessions, session, and then we need to add the password to our API object. So headers dot update, and I'll just pass API key. So now we have our link to our RIT. So now if we want to get a just the last price of crazy, first of all we'll just create like a package that will like store. So if we go into how to get the last price, we go into get securities. So this is just like where the endpoint of the API. So this is what we'll be calling. And we can see that it can have it needs a parameter, which is the ticker. So which security we want. If we don't, it's going to return to us every single security, might be what we want. And it's going to return us in the form of a big JSON. This is JSON format, and we can see that one of the parameters that will get us is the last price, and it's going to give us a number. So if we go in our code package, we want to have something called ticker, and we want to pass a ticker value. So so ticker colon and then crazy, because we want to get the crazy last price. So we'll have a response, which is basically what we'll get after calling, and then we'll say API.get, and then we need an URL. So it always starts with HTTP colon // and then if we go in our documentation, all the way at the top, we have localhost 9999 v1. And then we want to have securities. And then we need to pass the package. So that goes as params is equal to package. And then we want to, as soon as we do that, we want to convert it to a JSON format. So we just .json and then in parentheses. And then, so now we have a parse object. So if we just print our response, you can see that we get this very long string, which might be what we want, but mostly we want the last price, which is 924. If we go in the case, we can see that it was trading around 924. So if we want to get just the last price, we could go 0, because usually you would get a list of tickers if you don't specify which one. But in this case, there's only one, and in Python it starts at 0. So if you want the first one, it's actually 0, not 1. And then we would call the last price, and then we could call it. So if you want to do like a simple loop for I in range 10, and then we also need to import time if you want to do that, and then we would do time.sleep 1 second. So it's going to basically print the last price, wait 1 second, and it's going to do it 10 times. And then we need to put a colon at the end. And then we can see that we're printing the last price, and you can see it's trading in that range. But the case is over right now, so it won't move. But that's really the basics of like how to build the basics of like how to interact with the API. In the next video, we'll be trying to get a very, very simple API to receive tenders. So that's it. I'll see you in the next video.